All right, fig lovers. Today's video, we're gonna talk about how fast fig trees grow, how big they can get and how fast they grow in one season. We're not only gonna look at today, by the way, container fig trees of different ages. We're gonna look at how fast the young fig trees grew, how fast the older fig trees grew, but we're also gonna look at the in-ground trees that I just planted this spring. How much growth did they put on in one growing season? And also the older trees, how much did they grow in one growing season? All right, so before we get started with today's video, I wanna make 3 announcements. First, my fall fig tree sale is gonna start November 12th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're gonna be selling trees of all different sizes, but there's gonna be 50 trees, at least 50 trees of these larger sizes, these 3 or 5 gallon size pots. We cut them back to a foot, and that way we can ship them to you guys. Also, my annual cutting sale is gonna start November 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And finally, I have a booklet that I've created for you guys. It's titled Figure It Out, Choosing a Fig Variety. So it's all about choosing a fig variety. It'll save you time, money, and energy. Do me a favor, check out all that information in the description. And also, please, right now, hit the subscribe button if you haven't. Hit that like button. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Fig trees are actually one of the fastest growing fruiting plants, but they also are one of the earliest to fruit. So early on in their life, and only 6 to 8 months from cutting, you can get your fig tree to fruit. And in fact, that's what all of these are here in front of me, these young potted fig trees. They're all in 3 or 5 gallon size pots, and I just rooted them from cutting back in March or April. So this tree here has been growing from cutting for about 6 to 7 months now. And it's grown in that time about 4 to 5 feet in height. So that's pretty impressive for a potted tree, but I would say that's actually more the norm. You can see along here, a lot of the trees have grown anywhere from 3 to 6 feet in height in one growing season. Now, some of these other trees here are a bit smaller in the front, and that's because they were up potted and also rooted at a later time. One of the things I think people overlook a lot is actually the fruits themselves. If your fig tree is covered in fruits, well, that fruit set is actually taking away energy that could be put towards more growth. So if you have a fig tree that you really want to grow faster, I would recommend removing the fruits. Now, one of the things people sometimes ask me is they want a smaller fig tree. They don't want it to grow as fast. Well, actually, just by putting it in a container, it's naturally going to be smaller. Think about it. There's only so much space, nutrients, and water that this fig tree can grow in. So if you want a smaller fig tree, just put it into a smaller pot. The bigger the pot is, obviously, the bigger your fig tree can inevitably get. Now, these older trees here, some of these have been in their pots for about 3 or 4 years now. We grew it as a single stem. We topped it here. It then formed its scaffolds. Then last year, it actually put out some new fruiting branches where it produced fruit. We enjoyed those fruit. And then in the 3rd year, which is the year that we're currently in, it's now produced new fruiting branches where there's a ton of fruit. You can see it's still here on the tree. The new growth on the tree is only about 4 to 6 inches. The other trees we looked at grew 3 to 6 feet, whereas these are only growing 4 to 6 inches. I mean, that's a pretty stark difference. This tree is filling its pot, and so it's only gonna have so much more room to grow. And to remain annually productive though, we have to do either 1, root pruning, or 2, what I would recommend, just to make your life a little bit easier, is to shorten these branches here, these fruiting branches, by about 50%. That's gonna really help them remain annually productive and annually vigorous so that you guys can have a productive fig tree in a container long term. So how fast do in-ground fig trees grow? How much growth can they put out in one growing season? If you could see all these trees here behind me, there's actually about 60 fig trees. That forms a nice hedge. We had a very brutal winter here in the Philadelphia area, and as a result, the trees were knocked all the way to the ground. They're restarting all the way from the base, most of these trees. That gutter there on the house is about 10 feet, and there's some trees over there that have grown even taller, a few feet taller than 10 feet. But is this normal? Not exactly. I'm gonna show you guys trees on the western side of the house that grew a lot slower. In fact, they only grew about 1 to 3 feet versus 7 to 10 feet. Well, what is the difference between that? It's really just the amount of pruning that these trees behind me received. And I mean pruning in the sense of winter damage. The trees don't know the difference between winter damage and what you did with your pruning shears. If we prune our fig trees, we shorten the branches back, the further we go during the winter time, or if it's the winter cold that does it, the more our trees are gonna grow the following year. Now, the west side of the property tells a very different story because you've got some trees like this Ronde Bordeaux here, which took a ton of winter damage and got killed all the way down to the ground with the exception of one branch. And now it's grown about 7 or 8, 9 feet. The other tree right next to it, Moro de Caneva, has only grown about a foot. This branch here is about a foot of new growth. These branches over here are about 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet at the most. And that's it. Now here's a really interesting point I want to show you guys. This is my Ronde Bordeaux fig tree. All this back here that we looked at, again, 7 to 9 feet of new growth. We also have, though, one branch that was able to get through this past winter time without any damage. Pretty amazing how one branch survived and the rest didn't. On this new branch, we've got about a foot of new growth to about 2.5, maybe 3 feet at the most of new growth. That's amazing, right? Because one section of the tree has grown a lot slower than the rest of the tree. Well, that's because different parts of your tree have different amounts of hormones. One hormone tells it to grow, one tells it to fruit. Not only are the hormones dictating how fast your fig tree grows, but it's also dictating all kinds of things related to the fruits themselves. This branch here produced fruit 2 months earlier than the branches over here, which really haven't produced a whole lot of fruit at all this season. So right in front of the Ronde Bordeaux fig tree, I have about 12 fig trees that I planted. These fig trees have been in the ground for about 3 to 4 months now, 2.5, maybe even up to 3.5 feet of new growth. I hope you guys learned something here in regards to how fast fig trees grow, how much they can grow in one season. And I thank you guys here for watching. Please do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We'll see you for the next video.